Elon Musk has just made a really big mistake. The new Twitter CEO, it's recently been discovered, has turned a bunch of rooms at the Twitter head office into bedrooms. So this naturally has got people talking, the good and the bad. But there's a much bigger problem that no one's talking about. Okay, so Elon Musk has recently become head of Twitter after taking over the company earlier this year. With his other ventures, famously Tesla and SpaceX, being heralded as companies of the future, and Elon Musk himself having a pretty distinct personality to match, he's got those who love him and those who, well, don't love him so much. But either way, this guy is someone who many consider to be a visionary in the world of business. Many people look at him as a modern-day productivity guru. So how then has he made one of the most basic productivity mistakes? And what can every working person who struggles with their sleep learn from his big mistake? It starts with hustle culture. So you may have heard the stories of companies that are now massive, those that started their early days as just one or two nerdy teenagers in a basic office. You see photos of them working away with takeaway boxes by their side, computers around them, some of whom were literally inventing the operating systems we use today. And in the background of these photos, sometimes you look and you see that they've literally got their beds there, and you realize they're working out of their bedrooms. That's when you realize there really is no separation between work and sleep. In fact, that's exactly what Elon Musk is pretty clearly setting out for his employers at Twitter. Fundamentally, he's trying to return to his hustle roots. And for a lot of us, whether we think that's a great idea or not, we look at that and we think, wow, that's pretty hardcore. It might initially make sense that the more hours you're at work, the more productive you might be. But I imagine that most of you can see through that fallacy, which is that you can absolutely be somewhere, be at work, so to speak, and be completely unproductive. And when it comes to sleep, pushing your body to be awake and at work in this work dorm hybrid setup is really working against your biology. So there are three factors that come into play here. Number one is your body's circadian rhythm. If you don't know, your circadian rhythm is a set of clocks in your body that naturally regulate your sleep and wake activities. These range from regulating your body's signaling for waking and sleeping, but also things like hunger, your blood pressure, and your bowel movements. Your circadian biology is an unchanging fact. Whether you like it or not, it carries on in the background. This then means that anything we do as humans to counter that natural clock in our body for wakefulness and sleeping is unnatural. This can have vast consequences on an enormous amount of processes that go on inside our body. So it's really not just a matter of productivity that we're dealing with. Disruptions to circadian biology can literally result in a higher mortality, as well as things like depression and anxiety. The second system that Elon's messing with, I nearly said mussing with, the second system that Elon's messing with is adenosine. Now, adenosine is a molecule that builds up in the brain the longer we're awake and active. We sometimes refer to this as sleep pressure or sleep hunger. At some point, this pressure or hunger for sleep naturally gets to the point where it tips the balance in favor of us falling asleep. Obviously, if you've ever pulled an all-nighter or stayed up late with friends, you realize that you can, to a degree, counter this natural buildup of adenosine. Things like caffeine in coffee actually naturally block those same receptors that adenosine binds to. That's why you can stay awake for just that extra bit longer once you've had some coffee. So yeah, to an extent, you can push past this natural buildup of sleep pressure, but at some point, the balance just does tip in favor of sleep. Whilst there's no such thing as catching up on sleep, it's inevitable that if you stay up for long enough and you then fall asleep, you're probably going to sleep in a little bit longer. So Elon's grand plan of having bedrooms in his headquarters may just mean that people end up sleeping in after they've had a long all-nighter. The final thing is crucial, and this is what a lot of other workplaces also struggle with, and that is light. And specifically, I'm talking about natural daylight. Light is one of the most natural fine-tuning mechanisms for our body to regulate sleep and wakefulness. It also has a number of amazing benefits for our biological systems. It's a bit too much to cover in this video, but it's just inevitable that Twitter employees will not be getting the amount of natural daylight that they need if they sleep at work. Even if you have windows in your workplace and you have daylight coming through them, Jamie Zeitzer at Stanford University says that the light that you actually receive to the back of your eyes can actually be up to 50 times less than what you get from outside. But there's an even bigger thing going on. This is what causes long-term damage, burnout, and a sleep problem that didn't exist to begin with. You see, when you pair your sleep and your work environments together, you're doing something on a much deeper neurobiological level. By doing this, you're forming an abnormal connection between where you sleep and a state of wakefulness. We call this conditioned arousal. So if you suffer with insomnia, and specifically sleep onset insomnia, you might be familiar with this feeling. You might be winding down for the evening, getting into your pajamas, turning down the lights. Maybe you've had some chamomile tea that's non-caffeinated. But the moment you get into bed, it feels like a light has just been switched on in your head and you can't sleep. This is a really common complaint for a lot of people with insomnia. And the problem here is that there is an abnormal connection with their bed and their bedroom environment and a state of being awake. My concern is that the same thing might apply to Elon Musk's plans. By forcing his sleeping environments and his working environments within the same square footage, there's a good chance that he may be creating a sleep problem where there wasn't one before. And this is bad news for employees and the company as a whole, because really, if you have a workforce that is tired and come into work drained, then instead of having a really productive and engaged workforce, productivity is going to tank. So the days of Silicon Valley hustle are unfortunately just a bit outdated. So if you're an employer or an employee, there are potentially some takeaways that you could learn from Elon's big mistake. Number one, you just can't really work against your intrinsic biology, and it's no good for your health. Number two, getting as much natural daylight from outside is the best option. You're not going to be doing this if you're stuck inside your office all day. You're certainly not going to be doing it if you have no commute because you're sleeping in your office. And finally, conditioned arousal is real. And if you don't have a sleep problem to begin with, you could certainly cause one within your workforce by pairing sleep and work together. Because really, alertness and productivity in the day goes way beyond sleep and wake. It's about finding purpose with the work that you're doing. It's about having meaningful conversations and relationships with your colleagues and clients. And it's also about feeling valued by your leadership and feeling like your health and your well-being matter. So Elon, if you're watching, listen up. You're much more likely to have a productive and alert workforce if you let them go home at the end of the day. And then they can come in the next day feeling engaged for the day ahead. So if you're a busy working person who has sleep issues or wants to learn more about being alert in the daytime, you might want to check out some of my other videos. That's what this channel is about. And if you found the video helpful, it always helps me to give the video a like and hit subscribe. But until next time, bye.